Yes, here we go.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Talk to Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle C. Baker. And before we get started, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to whichever channel you're listening or watching from. And of course, this is season 4. So I do invite you to have a look at the 3 previous seasons. There may be some topics there that you may relate to a bit more. There are timeless, so I'm sure there's something that I can help you as well. We're going to jump right in. For some reason, I'm struggling with my speech today, but Cameron will help me a little bit. I have an amazing guest
Certainly.
today. And I just love this topic because it brings in the science with our realities of parenting today. So I'm not going to
Yeah,
put too much information, but I will put the spotlight on you. I have Cameron Allen with me today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited to have you on.
absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you.
We had, I think, for those who are listening, we had probably a whole other episode going on before we started recording. Uh, so this will be a fun one because we're all warmed up.
That's right. That's right.
And
Oh,
so before we get started on, your neuroscience, biofeedback, all of that, I'd like you to kind of talk to us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
sure. Absolutely. So, my name's Cameron Allen, and I am a father of 4, and we've got a blended family that's a lot of fun. And we got some younger kiddos and a couple older kiddos, and I'm also a neuroscience technologist, which really just means that I get the opportunity to study a lot of the things that we're really interested in. A lot of people are interested in kind of understanding how we tick and what kind of drives us, what's going on in our minds, our brain, our nervous system that, contributes to the life we're living. And why is it that we do the things we do, experience the things we experience. So I've spent the last 20 plus years in neuroscience and have reviewed over 8,000 brain scans and have had the opportunity to research and publish with a lot of really cool neuroscientists, neurosurgeons, geneticists, all kinds of folks. And my background and kind of what got me into all of this, I was heading more towards aeronautical engineering. I love flight, I love aviation, and had a really personal experience with my family where my brother had kind of developed depression after a series of head injuries. I experienced a lot of suicidal ideation, attempted suicide a number of times, and my family had tried everything. We had tried, medication, we had tried traditional therapy, all kinds of stuff with little windows of reprieve and lessening of the symptoms. But it really wasn't until he went through this neurotherapy program that I really looked at doing brain mapping. I looked at, addressing all aspects of the nervous system, not just what's happening in the brain. And all of a
Mhm.
sudden, the lights came on for him, and our family was able to kind of reconnect, reunite. A lot of the, overwhelm that he had been experiencing that caused a lot of chaos in the household, like all just subsided, and we were all able to kind of come back together. And you know, it was through that experience that I really realized that, this needs to be out there through education, through making the technology more available and, making it less expensive. It was extremely expensive. And so it's been a mission of mine just to be able to make neuroscience in general more accessible and really being able to translate it from the complex hard science into how do we actually use it in our lives? Why is it important to us? And then to be able to make some technologies that are able to be used at home so that people can get a lot of the benefits of what a $30,000 program could cost in a clinic, that they can have that for, little to nothing at home. And so, yeah, so my goal really kind of big dream here is to be able to positively impact 50 million lives over the next 10 years through education, neuroscience, and technology. So that's kind of
I,
what's driving me.
I love that. And it's so needed because it's something, especially when we're talking about neuroscience, we automatically think this is just a little too inaccessible for me. You're
Definitely.
thinking big machinery, a lot of doctor's appointments and all of that. And so I think you're probably one of the first ones that I know that is saying, okay, how do we make that accessible to everybody?
100%.
And it's so
100%.
needed. It's so needed because especially when you're dealing for those, so it is a reality for families. Uh, and I work with ver various neurodivergent children, but
Mhm.
uh, it could be a physical injury or it could be something else. It does
Absolutely.
have an impact on the entire family,
It
and
does.
your work brings in everybody. It's not just we're focusing on the child or we're going to focus on the parents are on their own. They have to figure it out on their own. You're bringing it all
Absolutely.
in. Can you
Yeah.
talk to us a little bit? Oh, go ahead. I was,
Well, just off of that, I think it's really interesting, when we look at, anybody that we're working with, whether they're dealing with a head injury or they've got some really cool neurodivergence that's coming out and that they're experiencing the world in a very different way. The
yeah,
entire family system is impacted, and the entire family system is all coming together to kind of lock in certain behaviors and also and when somebody begins to shift, it's an impact on the entire family. And even if it's a positive shift and things are really opening up, and you've got a kiddo that's going from being nonverbal to actually able to learn some words and to start communicating in a different way, it changes the impact on the entire family. And even though it's positive, it still is different and it's a stressor and the whole system has to adjust. So I'm glad you bring that piece into it and how much you focus on that. It's huge.
yeah. It
Yeah.
is because we know, concussions or we know if there's seizures or anything like this, it does affect the brain. The neurodivergent world is still a little blurry in a
Mhm.
certain cases, but your work really brings it all in. And if you could maybe talk to us before we get into how can families get started into helping or feeling a bit more harmonious in the way that their
Yes.
everyday is working. Maybe you
hmm
could talk to us a little bit of what that looks like in your practice and what you do and how you bring it to the families.
Sure, sure. So my focus really is on kind of the translational neuroscience of taking all of the, hard science and then saying, okay, what are the tools out there that we can actually use? And so here in Asheville, North Carolina, at Sensorium Neuro Wellness, which is a clinic I've got here, we really are focusing on doing a full nervous system assessment for everybody who walks through the door, whether it's for neurodivergence all the way up through, Parkinson's, even into some of the dementias and that kind of thing, or if it's ADD, ADHD, anxiety, and anything that is coming out of the brain, we'll take a look at and work with. And so we start with, doing a full brain map, taking a look at what's happening actually in the brain. It's interesting because, mental health and kind of developmental health is one of the only industries where you're not actually getting a picture of what you're working with most of the time. If
Yeah.
you get a broken arm, you're going to take an x-ray. But when it comes to brain health, we oftentimes just rely on the downstream symptoms. So we really want to get a good, clear picture with a brain map. We also want to evaluate, some of those early primitive reflexes, those things that should integrate by about 2 years of age. And if they don't, they're constantly sending signals to the brain that cause the brain to feel like there's a threat coming at it just every so often, and it breaks up all of the resources that we have. We really want to look at the cranial nerves, how the brain and the body are communicating, the sensory system of how the individual is experiencing the world around them and handing that information to the brain. And then we really want to be able to dive in and look at other functions like ocular motor function. How much is our visual system actually taking in information? Are we missing certain cues? And all the way along with any of these pieces. And of course, we want to look at heart rate variability or pupillometry to evaluate what's the stress level of the nervous system, because everybody's experiencing a different stress level. And if you're elevated in your stress, you're not going to learn, you're not going to change, you're not going to grow, you're not going to heal. And that can be for parents, that could be for kiddos, that could be for anybody. And one of the things that's really interesting in the assessment and why we're starting there is that if any aspect of our nervous system, any of those layers are not sending information appropriately to the brain, our brain is a predictive machine. All it's able to do is take the information it's getting and then make decisions based off of that. So if it's getting half the information, then it now has to guess at how to show up, how to operate. So that can then express as, hyperemotionality, hypercognition, overthinking, rumination, fear response, trauma response, all kinds of things, or just distraction, focus, attention issues, that kind of thing. So, really being able to see where in the nervous system some of this stuff is happening is really useful to then say, okay, it's you're not broken. There's nothing that is can't be changed here. That let's just start at this layer of development, build the scaffolding there by using tools like neurofeedback, biofeedback, vestibular and proprioceptive therapies like being on a vibe plate or a balance board, or doing ocular motor exercises and strengthening those muscles by tracking certain things. Being able to use virtual reality biofeedback to be able to help strengthen the feedback loop between the brain and the body and help the individual really regulate and calm and notice a lot of those internal narratives and patterns. Or, here we're using hyperbaric oxygen therapy, we're using contrast therapy with cold plunge and sauna, red light therapy bed. But really, at its core, most people don't need all of that. And so really it's a matter of doing the assessment, figuring out what levels are out of sync, and then being able to just target those areas with really meaningful exercises that then can actually build the scaffolding so the rest of the nervous system can calm down and individuals aren't just in kind of that reaction to their symptoms anymore. There's more space, there's more freedom to choose rather than react. So, yeah.
I love that. This is what I find interesting is that it takes the guesswork. There's no guessing there. You see
Yes,
where uh it's not a hit or miss. It's just this is where we're at. Let's start from here and let's move on.
absolutely.
It's such a more I personally find it's more of a gentle approach to it because it allows you to say, like you say, you're not broken. We can fix this. We
Hmm.
just need to know where we
Yeah.
need to where we need to start. So uh
Absolutely.
I love
There's a
that.
quote I really love that's your nervous system's never made a mistake. It's just solving problems that may not exist anymore. And so our nervous system is constantly just trying to help us out. But if we're no longer in that place or developmentally we don't need that anymore, it actually becomes an issue. It becomes a symptom. And so
Yeah.
one of the other things in that I love about neuroscience and this approach in general is that it really puts the control and the authority back in the hands of the people that are actually dealing with this. And this idea of democratizing healthcare, where it's like, we all know what's going on within us. We know what's happening with our children. We know something's off. And through just the right information and asking the right questions, we can then say, okay, I have enough information as a parent for me to say, okay, this is something that resonates. This is something that's going to be useful. And so often we are just relying on the professionals to say, yep, I've done this assessment and now I see what's happening. I'm going to go ahead and prescribe this. I'm going to go ahead and do this, rather than really helping parents truly understand. I can't tell you how many people come in that have had a brain scan or a SPECT scan of some sort or something else. Like, I have no idea what this means. The doctor just told me that this is what I need to do now. And well, let's get into that. Truly understand what's happening so you can make the best decision for yourself and for your family. And I think that's so important.
It's
Yeah.
a game changer for sure
Mhm.
because I get it, as parents, I know that there's nothing worse than feeling helpless when it comes to your child's health or even yours,
Absolutely.
or your
Absolutely.
aging parents. There's like a wide
Hmm.
spectrum there that we're working with.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of background noise. There's a lot
There
of
is.
misinformation. You don't know if you're getting the right one. You want to stay away from Dr. Google. So,
Right? Yes.
so it's just to
Mhm.
know that there is something out there, and this is why it's so important to have these conversations, is that there is a way for parents to feel solid in the
Mhm.
journey they're about to take, whether it's for
Absolutely.
themselves or their children. I
Yeah.
love that.
And I think for parents as well, with that, the idea of, I love you mentioned that there's just so much noise out there. And for parents who, they're in the throes of it. They're constantly trying to make the best decisions for their kiddos. And there's a lot of pressure behind that. There's a lot of weight that we carry as parents of, am I getting it right? Am I doing it right? And then on top of that, you have that stress of just caring for our kiddos, and then all of a sudden we don't show up the way we want to. We're
Yeah.
reactive, or we're not present, or we're so focused on providing or caring for that we're just not in the relationship. And then all of those internal narratives that we take on as parents, and the things that we turn towards ourselves, which then just builds the stress even further and builds the stress
Yeah.
even further. And then we're just in fog as a parent. And so then to try and make those kind of decisions about like what is best, I have no idea, but I'm hopeful that there's something. And so I'm willing to try.
Yeah.
And parenting's hard. It's
It
difficult in that way.
is. And
Yeah,
with everything you just described, you're hijacking your nervous system. So
100%.
you can't, I love that. The fog. Oh, do we ever have that fog? It's so hard. It's even harder to make a decision because you're just piling on even more. And that's part of your work as well. I wanted to kind of get into that where
Yeah.
you going into the self-compassion, co-parenting. How do you work with all of that? Can you walk us through if a parent is really going through it and heard it and I was like, oh my God, this is exactly where I am right now. Can you walk us
Yes.
through a little bit on practical applications of how they could get started or how to notice it and take it from there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So I think the first thing that's really important is to recognize that parenting is hard for everybody, that
Mhm.
we're all in it. And very often we're not actually communicating vulnerably parent to parent. We're seeing the highlight reels on Facebook, or we're seeing all of the
Right.
things that are like other families' best moments. And we're sitting here being like, oh, I just got reactive with my kid. And so we're constantly in this point of comparison. So there is that
Yeah.
piece of it. And so just having some awareness around that may be useful. And then really looking at the fact that, you know, when we're parenting, one of the biggest things we can bring to our kids is oxytocin. So, oxytocin is bonding, connection, just feeling present with them. And the really cool thing about parenting and kind of this idea of self compassion in parenting is that, we're going to get it right. 20, 30% of the time, maybe, some of us in some other areas may get it right in other ways. But the cool thing about oxytocin is when we come back and we actually recognize that we're doing what we need to be doing, we're aware of what we're doing. And just through awareness, we're actually releasing oxytocin within ourselves if we're not going into beating ourselves up about
Hmm.
it. And then going and actually repairing with our kids and going back to them and being like, hey, I didn't show up the way that I wanted to. I want to do this differently. Can we restart this? And modeling that for our kiddos, that actually releases a far more oxytocin, almost 300% more oxytocin to be in repair than it does just to be in connection consistently. And for our kiddos to be able to see that pattern as well allows them to kind of ground and re-engage and opens up for more co-regulation, the ability to, when they're feeling escalated, whether it's sensory integration stuff, whether it's just emotional overwhelm, natural growing, whatever it is, that for us to be able to drop in to that vulnerability and authenticity, that actually invites them in. And the neuroscience shows that when we're in that state, our brain waves begin to sync up, our heart rate actually begins to sync up, and we can actually model how they can regulate. And so being able to take that intensity of parenting and really use it as a gift, as a reminder of like, oh, cool, I get this opportunity to bring this into relationship rather than beating myself up that I didn't show up the way that I wanted to. So that's one area that I think for a lot of parents being able to do that and is important. And then another area that a lot of parents and will talk with me about, and you've probably heard this a whole lot, is that when you show up and when you're in a stressful relation or stressful kind of parenting relationship, and then your spouse is also trying to figure it out, and there's not a lot of clear communication, now we feel judged by our other and by the other spouse. And so now there's a lot more pressure to perform in the parenting relationship. And so, as co parents and being able to kind of show up together, being able to definitely hold accountable and say, like, you know what? I see that behavior was pretty disconnecting between you and the kiddo. And I know that you want connection. And so this looks like something that you're doing that's getting in the way of what you actually want. And
Right.
not saying like totally fine, get reactive with the kid, go avoid, go work instead of like facing the fact that parenting's difficult, whatever.
Right.
Actually being able to say, like, I know that you really are wanting connection. I'm seeing that this thing caused disconnection. Come on back, show up,
Mhm.
just go and sit down and be close to your kiddo, go play for a second, go ask for forgiveness and actually repair. And in that, then the other parent isn't enabling those behaviors that end up continuing to spin out. And then the parents together have more safety and more oxytocin between them. There's not as much performative pressure, and we can then build better relationships and stronger relationships with our kiddos. And so I think those are a couple things: the self-compassion and giving yourself space to get it wrong and show back up, and then to have empathetic, accountability between partners rather than judgment. And that those two things are some of the biggest pieces that I see. When that shifts, kids' behavior changes considerably, because kids are picking up on all of that tension and their nervous system is going to spike. And whenever your nervous system is turned up, that turns up the dial on every other behavior that we have. And all of our behaviors are just communication. They're just asking for something that we need. And so if a kiddo is getting really escalated and kind of getting, or having more sneaky behaviors or more, whatever types of behaviors, that's just because their nervous system is amping up. It needs something. So if we can just together come into it with bringing our nervous systems into a place where there's more openness, more freedom, less pressure to perform, then our kiddos actually are able to show up in a much different way. So I could continue rambling about those things
Oh,
forever, but
we could go on forever with that one because
mhm,
that is big as well, just because uh, the children are piggybacking off of our nervous system. So if we're amped up, they're
100%.
automatically amping up. If we're ignoring their, because it's a language in itself. The way their behaviors is telling us something has
Yeah.
nothing to do with the behavior. So if we're in reactive mode, we're not seeing it, we're reacting. But the thing that really just the bells that went off when you were talking was, imagine speaking to your partner or the co-parent and them not be, because if you're all hyped up and you're all you're in it, and then your partner or the co-parent says you need to calm down.
Right. Yeah.
Usually
No.
that doesn't go over well, but when you're in a when you are in that state where you were able to see it, you were able to forgive yourself to say, okay, this is normal, this happens, I need to show
Hmm.
up and
Hmm.
show my kids how to self-regulate, and then to know that you can openly talk to your partner or the co-parent and not get a
Yeah.
reaction from there. That
Oh,
is
absolutely.
huge. it,
It's
it
huge.
almost sounds like a fairy tale, but it is
Right.
possible because
It
you
is.
do it all the time, and so I
Hmm.
love that. There's so much there we could talk about.
And all of this, I mean, I am a human as well. I am a parent that gets it wrong and gets it right every now and again. And that this is something that I've had to learn with my spouse as well. And that she and I, constantly are having these conversations. And it takes practice. It
Yeah,
doesn't initially feel safe. It doesn't initially feel accessible, but then showing up and recognizing at the core that we really want the same things. We want connection. We
yeah,
want everybody to feel good, to feel safe, to be able to be as successful as they want to be. And that it's only when we begin to forget that, and that then there's competition and we're no longer in open, true communication, hearing one another and not taking everything personally that the other person is saying, but authentically being able to say, okay, I hear where you're coming from, and being able to recognize, we're two different people figuring out how to communicate, and just to actively listen to the other person without judgment, without coming up with a way of responding to them or reacting to them, but just hearing where each other is coming from. and just taking it at face value and not projecting any other of our emotions on it, it's so hard to do. But it's something that with practice becomes something that's accessible. But it does feel fairy tale-ish when you first start, and it feels weird and odd and vulnerable and kind of cringy. But when you step into it, it then begins to unfold. And that when there's those glimpses of safety and those symptoms or those glimpses of connection, it expands quickly. It really does. Because that's what our brain and our body, our nervous system is designed for connection and for community. And it's only when our nervous system is amped up that we go into self protection and we start creating all these stories of how this person's trying to do something to me, or how I can't actually be vulnerable and open with this person. So, and yeah,
Yeah,
so by regulating ourselves, we have a lot more openness to receive that care and compassion and empathy from others.
yeah. And a bonus on that too is as you're doing all this and working that new muscle, your children are watching you and they're learning. So you're
Absolutely.
already giving them a head start on
Mm.
for them later on in life. So I think it's wonderful. And I would
Yeah.
even take it to the extended family because of course if you're
Oh
going
yeah.
through something where it doesn't even have to be a severe physical or neurological situation, but
Mm-mm.
when the
No.
family starts stepping in, it helps you to set those boundaries because now you know exactly what it is that you need. You're not
Yes.
reacting and you're
Yes.
on the same team with your partner or the co-parent.
Hmm.
And so yeah, and it does
Absolutely.
work. I mean, you've been doing this for so many years and you see the
Hmm.
results. So it's something
Yeah.
we just have to jump in and do it.
We've got to jump in and just try it. I think
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up the boundaries pieces as well, because there's so often boundaries are considered like this cage,
Yeah.
this thing that we're trying to contain a behavior. And so we're going to give our kids boundaries. But
No,
really, for each of us and our kiddos to be able to clearly name our preferences, our desires, and our boundaries and saying, hey, this is the line, that ends up creating so much freedom for our nervous system because it takes the guesswork out. And especially if we've got kiddos who are anxious, or we've got kiddos who are, have sensory integration stuff, that there's some kind of on the autism spectrum, even, or even just for ourselves and our spouses to be able to clearly state what it is that we prefer, what we don't, and hold those boundaries really consistently. It creates so much freedom for people to feel like, okay, I know where I stand. I can show up now, and I know exactly where the line is. When we have passive communication, or we have even manipulative communication, or we're just not vulnerable and open, then we end up going into a place where we're constantly having to guess, and we're always like, that's what sets up the framework for walking on eggshells or feeling like there's emotional landmines everywhere. But to be very, very clear and consistent with those boundaries, it's amazing. And if ever you cross a boundary, that's a great opportunity for repair and modeling repair. And if there's ever a time that your kiddo crosses a boundary, that's a great time to actually drop in and have a conversation and to be able to connect with them around that. And so it really does just open up so many opportunities for freedom in the relationship rather than caging and controlling. And I think kind of reframing how we feel about boundaries in that way is really important.
it really is. And for the kids too, this I think this was a major part of the conversation we had before we recorded was just how the younger generations now may be struggling with, values or boundaries
Hmm.
because they're being bombarded from every direction with
Constantly.
also, and it's ever evolving. It's changing so quickly that they don't have
Hmm.
time to sit down and say this sit right with me. They're moving
Right.
on to something else. So by
Absolutely.
doing it from the start at the core in the home, it really
Hmm.
sets them up for success later on, which I think is really needed right now. So
Totally
it's
agree. Totally
yeah,
agree. Yeah.
I love that.
I think it's so hard for kids in this age where there is just constant stimuli coming at them, that idea we were talking about, that there's just no foundational state of just sitting with yourself like we did as kids, to have
Yeah.
that sense of like what actually feels good, what actually feels grounding, what actually allows me to feel connected with myself, so I
Mhm.
know myself. And then when somebody's asking me to do something, or when I am impulsive about something, like I don't know the difference. I can't, without having that foundation, it's so hard to know the difference. And so
Yeah.
those boundaries really do create that opportunity to allow them to connect and to know what's meaningful, what's
Yeah.
real. So there is a place where values can land. And so we can actually communicate, why we have these boundaries, why there are these rules in the house, why are these things that I prefer, why respect is important and reciprocity in relationship is important. That without having that internal sense of one thing feeling different than another, something feels better than another thing, there's really no place for those lessons and those morals and those values to land and to actually take root. And I think and I see that a lot with parents these days, that they're just like, I don't understand why my kids just don't value. When I was growing up, we didn't talk back to adults. We didn't do
Yeah.
whatever. Like there was just all these things, but there's just not a lot of fertile ground for these types of lessons to land because there's just so much noise in the nervous system. So we have to regulate and drop in, inviting them into that space, holding that container with those boundaries so that there can be space for a lot of those values and lessons to land.
That's so true. We need that reference point that
Hmm.
to be able to see where am I? If you don't
Yeah,
know where you're starting off, you then where am I? It's
absolutely.
so important. I really like that. There was so much that we could talk about,
I
but you
know.
were mentioning that too before we started recording, is because it allows us, we had to, by being bored or having to find something to do, or knowing what the consequences were going to be if we were out of line. But it was grounding ourselves. But as a parent, because we were
Mhm.
mentioning that as well, is being able to come down and get into your child's world,
Yes.
to really discover your child and really bond and show up as a parent the way that you want to. You can't do that if your nervous system is
Is
hijacked, because
mm-mm.
you're up here and your child is down there. So to come down into your child's world, even if it's just to sit down. This is how I used to do it, especially in preschools, is just get on the floor with the kids and
Yeah,
see their worlds at their eye level. Changes the
absolutely.
whole perspective of what they're doing. And
Yeah.
so but you can't do that if you haven't done that work to say, okay, let's tone
No.
it down a little
Let's
bit.
tone
I'm
it
not in
down.
danger. There's no dinosaurs in my house, that
Right,
are coming at
right.
us. So let's see.
Yes.
Let's have fun. you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As you were talking about that, it is this interesting thing where we think as parents, we have to create the environment for our kids. We have to create the opportunity for our kids. But I would argue that our kiddos are constantly creating the opportunity and the invitation for us to ground and us to drop in. They
Yeah.
are constantly creating these magical worlds where they're playing, and that play is where they learn. And so, as kids or even as adults play, we actually learn 400 times faster when we're playing than when we're in rote learning mode and all of that. And so to be able to just have the perspective of, it is okay for me to drop the work. It's okay for the laundry to wait a little longer. It's okay for the dishes to be dirty. It's okay for, the
Yeah.
stain to be in the shirt. I am going to just drop in and just be in this moment because my kiddo is inviting me. And I would guess that every parent can relate to the fact that kids are constantly saying, "Mommy, Daddy, hey, look at this. See this. What's
Yeah.
this? What's that?" And if you take that time to drop in, and I think research shows that it actually only takes 7 minutes a day per kid that you've got to be one on one and directly connected with them for their nervous system to stay regulated and grounded. 7 minutes, like it's not that long. In our minds, when we're thinking about survival of our family or all of the things that have to get done, that feels like an eternity. And when we sit down to play, if you're like my mind has been historically, the clock starts and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, the first couple minutes I'm good, I'm present, and then it's like, oh, 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 and then I'm
Yes.
getting pulled out. And so constantly allowing yourself to have the gift of being there and experiencing the connection that we all want with our kids, but we rarely ever actually feel because we're constantly saying, these conditions have to be met before I can be present. We need the
Yeah.
money. We need the clothes to be done. We need the dishes done. We need the house to be clean. We've got to run these errands. And then I'll have time. Oh, well, the day's done and I was frustrated by the end of the day. That's not how I wanted to end it. And so, and just taking that invitation of our kiddos saying, like, hey, look at this. Hey, and just let them go in the theater of their mind and just go on that journey with them and see what that feels like. If you like it, great. If you don't do it again. But, it's
Yeah.
explore with them, experiment with them.
I love that. That's the core of my work is through play, and there's still a bit of a misunderstanding with child-led play,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
we're still planning the play, and as soon as we're
Yes.
putting in rules, then it's not child-led anymore. They're not
Mm-mm.
they're not themselves anymore. So just to let the child, I mean, yes, the boundaries again, you have
Yep.
to set the limits,
Hmm.
but within those limits, the child gets, and they come up with such great ideas you wouldn't even think of. So you don't even have to think about what can I do to keep them entertained. They will
Hmm.
entertain you if you let them. So and play
100%.
is so important even
So
for us.
important. Hmm.
And I'm not gonna get into it because we can do another episode on this one and we'll have to wrap it up. But I
Yeah.
working with being a sandwich generation, I started integrating play with my mom again, just because she's a
Oh,
big kid at
awesome.
heart too. So to
Yeah.
work for the bone density and stuff, jumping is a good thing. So I started playing hopscotch with her again, and she used to be
Amazing.
a hula hoop champion. So we started, and
That's
she's
awesome.
just laughing the whole time. And I'm like, this is better than physio right now. But it's good for
Absolutely.
us as well to reconnect.
Yes.
She was a single
Hmm.
mother in the army. There was no,
Oh my
it was like
gosh.
that. Everything had to
Yeah.
be done before we could
Yeah.
play. So that would be a whole other episode, but I just wanted to mention
Absolutely.
that it goes beyond that. If as a parent, if
Mhm.
you're listening to this or anybody listening to this, it starts with you, but then it just radiates out. So I think it's wonderful. Thank
Absolutely.
thank you. So again, I could talk to you forever, but
I
I
know.
gotta wrap it up.
We'll do it
Can you
again sometime.
can you oh, absolutely anytime. Can you share
Yeah,
with us maybe if people want to know more about your work and the actual services that you do offer? Because you have a whole virtual reality thing that is so cool that we're not going to
absolutely.
get into today because that
No,
would be
yeah,
another two
that's
hours.
totally fine.
But can you share with us maybe your website or any programs that you're working on? I know you have some cohorts with groups or individuals. Can you
Yes.
give us a bit of information on that?
Absolutely. So sensoriumneuro.com is the clinic here. If you just want resources, there's some free downloads and things to kind of explore. And then the other one is immersive.neuroprogeny.com. And that's this virtual reality biofeedback system where we're actually in groups of folks. So we have online community where everybody gets the headset at home. We'll send it to you, the armband to measure your heart rate variability, and it actually trains the brain to go into more of that relaxed resting state. It tones down the nervous system, helps us become more aware of our narratives and stories so that there's less pressure, less fog internally, so we can
Mhm.
show up in a more present, aware way that allows us to have a lot more freedom and self-compassion in relationships. And so that piece of it is the Neuroprogeny Immersive Mastermind. And if anybody has any questions about that, happy to answer any questions and feel free to reach out. And yeah, I'm just so grateful that you had me on here and that we're able to connect and love having conversations with you.
It was great. No, I just love it. It's just I love science is my first love. So the to be able to connect because again with child development, brain development, it just goes all together. So I just
It
love it. And I'll
does.
be sure to put all the information in the description box so people can
Amazing.
have a look, revert back to it to find your websites and that way they can find out more. I think it's great. Thank you
Perfect.
so much. Before we wrap up, I do have that one question I ask all of my guests. So
Yes.
I'm going to throw it at you because I know you're going to want to play along. But what do you want to
Yes.
be when you grow up?
Man, so when I grow up, I want to be a pilot and I really would love to actually have or be part of or help support a retreat facility that has a runway, has hangar homes, has the ability for people to come in and do neuroscience intensives, and to have an educational facility where people can come, and its whole purpose is to help people have access to learning whatever it is that they want to know about nervous system functioning, come in and be able to do some of the tools that help re-regulate. And if we could offer that through a nonprofit setting, that would be ideal. And so when I grow up, I would love to foster a project like that.
I love that. Oh my goodness,
Mhm.
you're bringing back your childhood love
Oh,
of
yeah,
aerospace. I love
absolutely. It's all got to come together.
it all comes together. That's the work that I do is actually just when I work with adults is okay, what was your main interest when you were little? Because we
Yeah,
always come back to that. So I love it. Oh,
absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah,
I'm on board with that one for sure. Let me know.
fantastic.
I like to contribute. It's great. Thank you again, Kevin. Anytime you
Absolutely.
want to come on, if you got anything new coming on, but I do invite everybody to
Wonderful.
go check out your website and see the work that you do.
Thank you.
There's so much, and it brings it all together, which is great because more traditional ways is just it separates everything, and we got to
It
figure out how to
does.
put all.
It's all integrated. And yeah, and I just so appreciate the work that you're doing to be able to get this out there and to provide these resources for folks. It's so important.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. We'll definitely have you back on. Thank you again.
Wonderful.
And I can't wait to see what's coming up next for you. It's going to be exciting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for everybody watching. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to whichever channel you're listening or watching from. Don't forget to go check out Cameron's websites as well to get more information. And until next time, stay safe, stay awesome, and we'll talk soon.